afternoon, it's Ruta, the world's bench press champion, here on the School of Wellness on Aspen Weight Radio. And today I have a special guest, double duathlon world champion and a very nice person. She owns a charity which helps to develop physical and mental well-being of children and young people. And it's Lindsy James. Hi, Lindsy.
Hi, Ruta. Nice to see you this morning.
No, thanks for coming to the show. It's really, really good. I'm happy that you agreed to come to the show. So let's probably start from your childhood. How was it? Were you doing any sports? And just tell me more about yourself.
Yeah, it's probably quite an unusual start because I haven't come from a particularly sporty family, and I would never consider myself as probably achieving high or good at sport. I was someone who was probably not very confident. I didn't excel in primary or secondary school, and I was always known as someone who was a trier, who had kind of a lot of grit and resilience, but probably didn't exhibit what you would consider as natural talent. But I actually see that is why I've been more successful in later life, because some of the young people that I knew that were very gifted and talented in sport, probably that felt like it was almost too easy, and not having that to match with that kind of I've got to work hard attitude. I've seen a lot of those people probably drop out of sport now. So I think probably not having what I would consider as the kind of natural talent and gift, but that sheer grit, resilience and determination has helped me have a long love and relationship with sport through my whole life.
Well, I think it happens a lot from what I've heard. Those who consider themselves very talented, they don't put as much work, and then they kind of don't develop as much as others who put the work. So it's the work that matters.
Yeah, and I've always kind of aspired to be like those people that seem to just have that talent, and I've really looked up to a lot of people, whether it was just people through my childhood and then throughout. I love watching sport and professionals, but you've got to have something there, yes, but you've also got to have the mindset and the passion really to kind of put yourself in places that aren't comfortable.
Absolutely, I agree. So how did you start? I don't know, you what I've read, you've been running a lot for many years. You've been a runner. So how did you start? As you said, you didn't kind of do too much when you were a child. So how?
Yeah, I think that involvement in sport throughout my life, I've had different motivations. So when I was young at school, it was very much around being part of like a cool group of kids. Like all the cool kids did sport, and I wanted to be part of that group. So I was always the one that was hanging around the PE department and taking part in lots of sport. And then as I kind of went on to university, it was very much around the social side. So team sport was really important, but then there was a big social aspect to that as well. So probably wasn't the healthiest actually at university, because that sport was also combined with probably drinking and eating the wrong foods. And then when I've gone into more of my professional career and setting up the charity, it's been that mental release really, and also being a mom, it's been that escapism of that's my time away, and that's probably the time that I do my most kind of bizarre thoughts about let's do this, let's do that. It's where I get my inspiration for things, is when I'm physically active. But I've really been a runner most of my life. So I did a race. I think where it came from, I did a race. It was a half marathon up in Leeds, and I think I was the highest finisher that wasn't associated with a running club. And someone came over and said, "You ought to join a running club." And I said, "Oh, well, I would, but I'm not competitive." Okay. And they said, it's not about being competitive. You can just come and just see how you get on. And that was really the start of it. Probably that running started in my early 20s, really. I competed at school for cross country, but I remember being last at the English school cross country event, and that being a real painful experience.
Right, okay.
I didn't have happy memories probably of running, so I always had something to prove to myself. And that competitiveness I do have the competitive edge, but it's more about I compete against myself rather than thinking about other people as such. I want to, and you're your own worst critic, I think. So my biggest competition is the competition or the voice in my head. And then that running, I've run for many years, so I've done anything from short distance, which I consider short as 5K, and then longer distance, which is marathon and above. I've done some like extreme events as well. And I've loved doing the kind of marathon, became my interest and my passion. And I did qualify to represent England at the age group for marathon, but through various years of illness and injury, it come up to those big events and just started to just not make the start line. And then it was really in lockdown, that first lockdown, when I thought, I'm going to be confined to a house. I'm going to set up a gym room like most people probably did. And I started doing the biking, more of the indoor biking. And it was my husband really that just said, you're so strong on the bike, you can push out some good power. You ought to look at the duathlon and combine the run bike and run event. And it really just started from there. Got myself a coach. The first time I've ever had a coach, which was great, because it wasn't, he brought the knowledge that I didn't really have around the bike and what I should be doing. And that's really been my focus the last few years. So probably started that around 2021 and focused on that because that was my weakness. And it's probably now become my strength, whereas running I sometimes think my running's not as strong now as what the bike is.
Well, I guess when you're doing like two things, something has to, well, kind of put the back foot, isn't it? You can't be strong as you were in one sport. It's now like two sports in one.
Yeah, and I think I know other people that have taken part, that have been duathletes and may have come from a running background, and they found that running speed and strength have come back over time. It's just you're focusing so much time on something else. I guess the balance will start to readdress itself. But I know I spoke to you as well about the last few years. It's the only years I've started doing some strength and conditioning, which it's not massively my passion, but I actually see the benefits of that. And whether it's doing the mixed sport with that, I'm certainly less injured and feel stronger and healthier as a result of doing a mixture of different things, but also the strength and conditioning as well.
So how do you manage? How much do you train, and then when do you get, I mean, like strength training, and obviously you have to do a lot of running and cycling. So tell the routine. What is your routine?
Yeah, so I train 6 days a week and then I have one rest day. Most of those sessions, the majority of hours will be spent on the bike because you need to spend more time on the bike and you can recover quicker from the bike sessions as well. So a typical week at the moment looks like a longer run on a Monday. So that may be around 10 miles-ish, which is like a recovery run. It's not at a hard pace. On a Tuesday, I go into a hard bike session. So that'll be often interval sessions. So it might be VO2 max training or looking at lactate threshold kind of training. I then go into my run on tired legs, which we often do in triathlon or duathlon training. So I do a hard session on a Tuesday, which is normally, again, intervals. That could be anything from shorter reps to I'm focusing now as we kind of periodize the training depending on when the events are. So my reps come in, it's more threshold, so it's getting longer, longer repeats. Thursday is my favorite day, which is an easy day. So it's often a turbo session, or it might be half. I may do 30-30, so 30 on the bike, 30 on a run. So you're getting transition into running on tireder legs. Friday's my rest day, and then the weekend's hard training. So Saturday's either really hard running, intervals again. It could be what we call a brick session. So that'd be a run, bike, run, or sometimes I do run, bike, run, bike. And they can be the hardest sessions that I do in a whole block. And then a Sunday's a long bike. So it'll be normally anything from 2 to 3 hours. And then in the week, I do 2 strength and conditioning sessions. So they're not really long sessions. It could be 30 to 40 minutes. But for me, because I'm not biomechanically sound, I would say, and I have quite a unique running style. I'm a little bit lopsided. Some people say it looks like you're running with a stone in your shoe.
All right, okay.
So I have to do a lot of more conditioning, really, which is making sure that I'm addressing some of those imbalances and the strength, and then building on the strength work with that. So yeah, in a typical week, it's certainly not the hours that you're probably putting in. I probably at this phase, I'm doing maybe 10 to max, I probably get to 12 hours a week.
Okay. Yeah, I train a little bit, probably more around 15 hours per week, but it's different training as well, what I do. So mine can be very, very short workouts and yours like long endurance, more than mine.
Yeah.
So, okay. So, what about your eating habits? How do you eat? How do you obviously eat? Because it's a lot of running, a lot of on a bike, a lot of hours. So how do you fuel yourself?
Yeah, I was hoping you wasn't going to ask me this, but everyone presumes like that I eat really healthily or I don't eat very much is often perception. Because when if I go to a social occasion, people go, wow, I didn't realize how much you'd eat.
Okay.
So I do have quite a big appetite. I'm quite a snacker. I tend to start the day well, and as I get to the evening and I get more tired, I've got really bad habits. So like unhealthy snacking a lot often slip in. I do eat balanced meals. So especially starting January this year, I've made a real conscious effort to just look at getting more nutrition from a wide range of different foods. So looking at like really different kind of a rainbow on a plate almost, where I'm getting sort of healthy veg, fruits, nuts, etc. I do eat a lot of carbohydrates. I know some people have this thing about carbs, but it's really essential within the sport that I'm doing that you've got that carbohydrate. I do use things like protein powders after a hard training session. But I do snack, so I'll tend to. I don't weigh or monitor food. I just know that when I've had a bad day, so strict to the diet. Like yesterday, when I reflected in the evening of the like chocolate or the scone or various other bits and bobs that crept in, I've kind of gone, right, today you need to be just a bit better. I think in my teens, food with a group of girls and also the pressure on that was around, that still is around, I was very, very aware of food and I used to restrict my eating. And I've always been someone that never wants to get back to that place. So I know that my coach said, oh, log your food. And I've said, actually, that's not a good place for me to be. I know when I'm being healthy and I know when I'm missing essential foods out. So I'm not someone that tracks food. I enjoy, because I train hard and I work hard, food is it's something I really enjoy. So I've never been someone who's gone on fad diets or said, right, you now can't eat that. Because when someone says you can't have something, I just want it more. So I just like, all that stuff is fine. You just have to have it in moderation. And we all have bad days. So I'll probably, I'm certainly don't lead as healthy a diet as I think you would. I don't do too bad.
I think that changed for me as well. I wasn't as healthy as I think before as well, and then during the years kind of evolved, tried different things, what works, what doesn't as well. I was tracking like calories. You say it was difficult for you. At the beginning I found it difficult as well. Then it kind of got used to it, but when it's difficult to track all the time, and when you are, it's easier not to track. So you just find your way around it. So.
And I know that in the past, when I certainly marathon training, I look back now and my physique's changed quite a lot since then. I was very, probably half a stone lighter than what I am now, but I had very little muscle. And I think that's probably why, as well with my nutrition, I probably wasn't, I know back then with that kind of endurance sport, being light is really important. Yeah. You get the balance right. And I think when I've tried to tip that balance of let's cut back, I just end up getting ill. And I actually, being slightly heavier now, not
Mm.
far off. I'm confident that I could get close to the paces that I was running at marathon by just having more muscle and more strength. I'm not someone who weighs themselves and worries about the scale. I can just tell in my own clothes and how I feel whether
Yeah.
I'm putting on a little bit of extra weight or not. And coming up to competition, I just try and keep. I think I've tried in the past where I've tried to almost panic in the last month, going, "Oh, it'd be better if you
Mm.
drop a bit of weight." It's really hard within duathlon because you want to be light for the
Yeah.
run, but you need to be strong and powerful on the bike. So
Yeah.
it's a difficult balance. So it's about just being mindful, I think, and
Mm.
making good choices and not trying to beat yourself up too much if you don't have a good day or you've not had a good week. You can always just go, right, well, now I'm starting to, I'm going to change these little things rather than saying I'm absolutely cutting everything out or I'm not going to do this for so long. That just personally does not work for me.
No, and I know how in one of the first comps in CrossFit comps before the competition, it was for me so important that I would look good. But going to the competition, basically starved for a week, going that I would look slim and nice. So it just, yeah, you find a way, and some things are just ridiculous, and you have to eat for performance more than anything, isn't it? It just
Yeah, and I guess like CrossFit, like I see professionals in triathlon and the body shapes are so different and
mm,
it's different girls winning different events, some that are really slight and lean that can push out great power, but
yeah.
then others that seem almost really stocky and muscular where you think,
Mm,
oh, they won't be fast on the run, but then they're using the advantage on the bike. So I think any body type can be successful in the sport.
mm,
And the course can play to different strengths. Obviously, if it's a hillier course, then the lighter athlete can often be more successful
yeah.
than a flatter course. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's just getting to the start line healthy and well is the most
Mm.
important thing. And I think really restricting food is more detrimental to not being on the start line than maybe going on the start line and being a few pounds heavier, but actually being physically healthy and well.
Yeah, absolutely. As you say, when you undereat or not eat the right food, let's say you starting to get ill, and
Mm.
then you can't train, and it's like a cycle, isn't it? You can't do anything because you're getting ill. So
Yeah.
when going to competitions, have you ever experienced like you prepare everything okay, and then you finish, then the competition, you get ill? Have you ever?
Yeah, I think yeah, I tend to straight after competition. I guess it's when you're on a high. I've done this before in the past. I've come out of an event and I've gone, I feel great, and then I've still wanted to push really hard. This is when
Mm,
I've had a coach before because I'm still on that. I've still got the euphoria from the race, and I'm like, right, I'm going to push on, and now I want to enter another race, and then my
mm,
body's broken down because I've not recovered.
yeah.
Sometimes at events as well, I know it's really important to fuel, especially for women, is to get that protein in, ideally within that kind of 20 to 30 minutes window.
Yeah.
But sometimes you can't access your bag or your own nutrition.
Mm,
And sometimes there's not very good nutrition at the end of the race. So I think that doesn't help. Sometimes I can finish a race and then I've not fueled, eaten anything or taken any protein in for like hours after.
yeah.
And that does have that. It just slows that recovery process of
Mm,
then recovering from that and being able to train again and being in a good position for the next race. But I'm not someone who competes really frequently. I
mm-hmm.
tend to pick 3 or 4 really key events a year and I'll try and peak towards those events. I actually love the training more than I do the competing, which
Okay.
not many people enjoy. And that's just because I get so nervous at
Mm,
competitions that I like seeing the progress and the process of the training leading
mm-hmm.
up to then and then on race day. Yeah, I'm a bag of nerves.
All right. So that one of the questions I wanted to ask. So how do you cope with those nerves? Because it might affect your performance on a day. So what do you do? How do you cope?
Yeah, I think each event's been different. I think the first World Champs was, which was in Spain. That was the first international competition that I did, and actually, because I'd been ill leading up to that event, I'd kind of not got expectation on myself, and
Mm-hmm.
because I'd never raced at that level before, and I didn't know the competitors who were there, I
Mm-hmm.
just like I'm actually just felt gratitude for being there. And I
Right.
just thought you're really fortunate that you made the start line and you didn't think you'd be here. And it's an honor to represent your country. So I was in a total, they're the pictures that you can see running on that, where I'm smiling.
Yeah.
On one of the running pictures, because I just felt gratitude that day, which I've
Mm.
never kind of been in that mindset before. I mean, my heart was racing like mad on the start line. I looked down, and sometimes I judge how I think, depending how I'm feeling on a start line, that's gonna have an impact on how I perform that day. My heart standing still was over 100 beats. My resting heart rate is low 30s. So it was,
Wow.
I just thought you need to calm yourself down. So I
Yeah.
really just practiced just almost trying to zone out of the situation and
Mm-hmm.
thinking about, right, just control what you can control. Doesn't matter what's going on around you. Take each section of the race, because you can break duathlon into the run. The transition is what they call the third discipline,
Yeah.
which can win or lose races on that, the bike, and then the run. So I was quite fearful of a section of the course which was extremely hilly,
Mm-hmm.
and I was worried about being able to get up the hill. And I was just like, don't even think about that. So I think I went into that race quite with a different mindset, but I always, once the, I always try and control my breathing a little bit when I'm on the
Mm-hmm.
start line, and I just try and sometimes support and help other competitors. That actually helps me, because when I see other competitors also in that real difficult headspace,
Yeah.
that takes the, if I'm helping someone else, it takes the focus away from how I'm
Yeah.
feeling, and sometimes that's a good distraction. But I wouldn't say I've found the winning formula. And but what I do think is, I used to think that those race nerves were a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd just be like, I hate that feeling. I hate that self doubt on the start line. But actually, it's just your body preparing itself and your mind preparing itself to perform at its best. And I've just kind of accepted it's okay and normal to feel like this. So it's not
Mm.
necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It is normal to be nervous as long as it's not overtaking you and, not stopping you from performing. So the next thing I wanted to ask, so how about injuries? Have you had any injuries? How do you cope? Do you normally train when you have injuries? So how do you do, and what does it mean on your mindset as well? That's another thing to cope with those injuries.
Yeah, I used to be, when I was marathon training, I'd always get injured at some point. Just the volume, I think, of the training that you have to do, and that it's such an impact sport,
Mm,
I would get a lot of leg injuries. But illness as well. I think illness took me out probably more than actually injury did. And that was just through being run down, probably not fueling well, probably not sleeping well at times,
mm,
a combination of different things. I've been least injured over the last 2 to 3 years, and I think that's a combination of following a good plan from a coach.
yeah.
I think when I was almost self-coached, doing my own thing, if the session was in, no matter how ill or even if I had niggles, it was like, you've just got to do it. For me, I was
Mm-hmm.
like, you've just got to tick. I build confidence in knowing that I completed every session how it was set out in my plan, no matter.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas he's very good at putting the brakes on and going, how are you feeling? Have we got any niggles? And you can miss that session because I don't think it's a good idea, and it's not
Mm-hmm.
going to affect you in the long run. It's actually going to help you if you don't do that now. So having someone to say it's okay not to do some of the sessions through being injured or ill has been a positive thing.
Right. So Lindsay, then tell me about the injuries. Do you have a lot, and how do you cope with them? Do you still train, and what happens on that side? And yeah.
Yeah, injuries, certainly had more injuries when I was just marathon training. I think a lot of that is due to just the volume and the impact of just doing that as a sport. And back then I didn't do any strength and conditioning either, so probably not very robust to making sure that my body is in good shape for taking on so much impact. Over the last few years, since I've got a coach, but also I've started to do the biking and the strength and conditioning, certainly seen a massive reduction in injuries. And I think some of that is when I used to be self-coached and I put my own programs together, I'd do the sessions no matter what, whether I was ill, whether I was injured. It was like tick everything off, because then I wanted to get to the start line knowing that I'd done everything possible. That's probably not the right or sensible decision. So having a coach that is aware of if I've got certain niggles and putting the brakes on has been really beneficial. My last injury was more of a nerve injury, which resulted at the end of the European Champs back in September, which took me out for about 12 weeks, which is frustrating because normally a pull, or if I have a slight niggle with something, it can take a couple of weeks to resolve. But because we couldn't figure out what the issue was for so long, it just took such a long time to get over that. But that took me till last November. So I've had a few months now back in training, slowly building that back up. Again, without a coach, I'd have gone, right, I'm starting back from where I left off 3 months ago. But we need to start building you up slowly, which I have to sometimes practice patience with the training. But it does. I know it makes sense. And he always gets me to the start line in the best shape that I can be in. So, fingers crossed, no more injuries for a while.
Okay. Well, hopefully, and you won't get any injuries. So because the coach is looking, you're doing strength training, so everything looks positive. So you're preparing now for the next European duathlon competition, aren't you?
Yeah, so we got the Europeans in Italy next month in March, and then the season's really close together this year. It's normally at least 6 months apart, maybe 7 or 8 actually, from European to World Champs. But the World Champs is at the end of April, so there's not much time between the two competitions, and the World Champs is in Ibiza in Spain. So they're the two main events. I've got hopefully we'll be at the Nationals a couple of weeks before the Europeans, just to get some of that race experiencing, because I've not raced since last September, so I'll be quite rusty.
Yeah, so it will be good to, as you say, just before you go to international one competition to do here locally.
Yeah, definitely.
So you became the world champion 2 years in a row. How was the second year? How did you feel? Because a lot of people put expectation on you, but they were expecting you to win again and do, no less than way before, like become a champion again. So did you put a lot of pressure on yourself, and how was it that?
Yeah, I think regardless, I always, no matter whether, even before World Championships, with races, I always put so much pressure on myself. I just want to know that, and I don't know why I do it, because I always know that I'll do the best that I can do. But I just dread the fear that if I do a race and I think, but I could have done something more, or did I really, if I question myself, did I really give it my all? So I put probably the most pressure on myself, but there were people kind of saying, and people do little write-ups through like British Triathlon where it'll say who the favourites are, and people were sharing that with me, saying, oh, you being previous world champ, you're the favourite. And I just was like, I almost have to shut myself off from that, because that just makes me worse. And so many things went wrong around that competition. You can always, it's probably the first major event or any event where I've just made stupid little mistakes, which I actually handled really well on the day. So things like the day before, you have to rack your bike. So you have to take your bike to the event. The event was basically on a racetrack in Pennsylvania in the middle of nowhere. So you take all your equipment the day before. You've got to have everything set up how you want it the day before.
Yeah.
So I took my bike across there. I did a little circuit of the motor racing circuit of the bike route, and I've got electronic gears, none of the gears worked. So I was just stuck in one gear, whether it was uphill, downhill, flat.
All right.
So I was in a bit of a meltdown about, oh my gosh, like my gears don't work. So my husband was like, I'm not sure like what to do. He literally just shook my bike hard, twiddled it a little bit, and then my gears started working. And it's like, it's sorted. But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, well, if it takes that for the gears to work, what if the bike shakes?
It's not working. Stops working, yeah.
I had this element of there's something totally out of my control that's worrying me, but I can't do anything about it. Then on the day, it was really hot. It was quite hot conditions, which none of the people from Great Britain had trained in at that time of the year. So I was a little bit unsure of how I would respond to that, and that I needed to make sure that I got enough fluids on throughout the event. And coupled with that, I turned up on the day. So I took all my kit there. I'd left my nutrition at home in the place that we stayed. So I'd taken my bike bottle off the bike to wash it. And as I'd taken all my kit out there on that day, just didn't even think about looking down and is my bike bottle there. So on a really hot day, I didn't have the fluids that I normally just take the fluids on the bike, and realised that of the morning of the event. So I just quickly thought, right, I need to just have a drink in the transition area, and I'm just going to have to lose time. And when I come in transition, instead of taking my drink on the bike, which is the most time efficient way of taking your nutrition on, because you can just hold in that bike position and drink, I had to stand still and just drink as much fluid as I could every time I either went into transition to get on the bike and then before the run, because I was so worried about dehydrating and then just hitting a wall. And I did lose some time there, but it was definitely, I just thought, I think I've got better at going, this has happened, you just have to deal with it. There's nothing you can do. So that particular event, it went really well, other than those things, other than equipment malfunctions and not taking it at the right time. But I had a strong run. I had a really strong bike. I wasn't leading off the run. I was leading off the run, but then I went into, I think it was second place through transition because of taking on the nutrition. And then I took again on the bike and I held the lead on the run. So I had that day was incredible. And that was in Romania, and it was such an amazing place to be and race. So the pressure's still on.
It always is. It never ends, isn't it? When you compete and go, especially to internationals, it's always, as you say, you put yourself, a lot of pressure on yourself. It's just one of those things. You want to do the best. And
in terms of making mistakes, the Europeans, I came into transition, like you put your bike, you look at where you've racked your bike, you spot, you look at what you can, because there's hundreds of bikes there. You have to look at different things in the environment to know that's where my bike's going to be, because when I come back, it's going to look totally different because people will have taken their bike. So you can't go, I'm next to the bright pink bike or whatever, that's where I'm going to be, because it might not be there. And I lost my bike. I came into transition, and I think through the adrenaline and the just being in complete race focus, I was running up and down this row, not just going, I can't find my bike.
Oh gosh.
I've never done that before in local events or anything. So sometimes on the day things just happen that you just have to go, you can be in the best shape that you want, you can be have prepared everything, and I'd prepared how many lampposts I needed to count on my bike. And sometimes things just go wrong, but you just, life's full of surprises.
Well, it is. You never know. So about the races, so what are the distances? I never asked. So how far do you need to run and bike and then run again? So what? How
So
long?
within duathlon, there's the sprint and the standard distance. So the standard distance is the event I compete in. So it's a 10K run, a 40K bike, and then a 5K run to finish. So that's the distance that I think I'm more suited to. I am looking at potentially middle distance, which is a longer distance, just because most of my sporting background has been more of that endurance training. I think I will be better suited to that. But the middle distance is not as competitive, so you don't get as many athletes competing in those. And I just think I quite like the fact that you're competing against a good standard of athletes. There's more athletes there. So it's something that I'll look at and try and see whether I enjoy that distance. But yeah, I think that the middle distance is something that suits me quite well.
Okay. Good. Well, obviously you have to play what suits you rather than, going on something what you like. Maybe you won't be competitive if you choose something else.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So in all that sporting career, how come you've chosen to run a charity and help kids then? What was your why and how you
Yeah,
decided?
I mean, that's the reason that I do the sport, really. Because I guess it starts with the vision of our charity is be the best you can be. And for someone who doesn't feel, has never felt very naturally gifted or talented, I try and just live by that day by day. I see organisations that say we're this, that, and the other, but their behaviours and how they act are very different to who they say they are. So for me, I'm always putting myself out of my comfort zone and always showing that things are possible, because that ultimately has an impact on my team, but also young people that we're trying to inspire and to encourage to have a healthy and active lifestyle. That it does take hard work, it does take time, it does take commitment, and you will have lots of setbacks. So I try and model that, really, and that's really the purpose. And I think through the stuff that I'm doing now that is competing on a different level, it's that story. You see how kids are inspired when they hear about achieving things, especially achieving things when people will maybe write you off or say it's not possible, is just to kind of inspire young people to go, anything is really possible. You've just got to have some belief in yourself, but someone else who believes in you. Because I do think it's not to be successful in sport and in running a charity or in business, it takes a team of people. And it doesn't mean that you have to employ a team. It means that you surround yourself in good people, and it might be that positive voice in your ear, or that's someone that has helped connect you with someone else. So yeah, that's really my why, is that I think that through my sport and through being passionate about sport, we can really impact on young people's lives.
So tell me more, what do you do in that charity? How do you help those kids?
Yeah, so we work with around over 30,000 young people a year. We work with all young people, but mainly young people that may be from disadvantaged backgrounds, young people with special educational needs, different minority groups, to support them with whatever challenges that they face, but ultimately to help them to be healthy, happy, and active. And we do that through working in schools, improving physical education. So we know that young people that have a positive experience of PE and physical activity are more likely to have that love for it for the rest of their lives, rather than a negative experience where we're turning young people and young girls and women in particular off of sport. Throughout that educational work, we also develop young people as leaders and a pathway into employment. So we run a lot of leadership training programs, and we use sport and physical activity always as the hook or the kind of tool to teach skills, life skills. So that could be teamwork, communication, that growth mindset, organisation, planning, all that links to being a good sports person, a good team player, which we can teach through sport. And then through that, young people move on to accredited qualifications and apprenticeship programs, and then employment. So we're helping young people right from the start to enjoy being active, but then also to be successful in life through helping them develop their employability skills. And then we work in communities, so we do a lot of holiday camps, a lot of provision for young people in more of our disadvantaged areas. I mean, we know in Doncaster that the life expectancy of young people can vary of 10 years from our most affluent areas to our most deprived areas. So for us as a charity, we just don't think that that's acceptable.
No.
Where you live shouldn't define your aspirations or expectations, but a big part of that is health and well-being. So how can we improve that health and well-being to give not just those years back, but good quality life to children and young people? And then we also work with businesses. So businesses can support our charity through, could be charitable donations, through providing their professional services in kind, but also we do team building and development days for businesses. We run business events in sports. So we do a number of events from football, golf, cycling, that businesses can get involved with. And it's often our local businesses that their children are benefiting from our charity, whether that's in education or communities. So, we have a team of 21 incredible people that work for us, most of those local young people that have come up through our leadership training program. So we're growing our own talent.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and it's an absolute, you know, the charity has grown a lot over the years, and it's purely down to having the best people and being people that care and that are passionate about making a difference to children and young people. I'm very fortunate that I've got a good team, the team in red that people see in the communities and in school. They're inspirational, and they're part of what we call the Fusion family. They're my extended family, and I've known a lot of them a long time. So I'm incredibly lucky to be part of something that I'm passionate about, that I care about, and be surrounded by good people.
Yeah, I can see how passionate you are when you talk. So how your charity is called?
Active Fusion. Yeah, so we're called Active Fusion. We're based in Doncaster, but we work across South Yorkshire and further beyond in terms of our apprenticeship programs. That extends a little bit further. So very much Yorkshire based.
Okay. Brilliant. So it's really nice to talk to you. And the last thing before we finish, I would like to ask you, what free advices could you give to people from your experience in your life, from what you experienced, what you've seen and so far? So what free advices you could give?
Three advices. I would say from my own experience is to take a risk and put yourself out of your comfort zone. It's really hard, I think, sometimes to worry about getting setbacks, but I don't think we learn and grow if we don't take those risks. A second one would be what I mentioned earlier, which is in life, whether you're running business, whether you're in business or you're in a charitable organisation, is to surround yourself with good people, because you can't do everything on your own, and you can't expect to be an expert of everything, and that's fine. But surround yourself with good people. And then the third one is something that I've probably not really focused on until more recent years, is just gratitude and just being grateful. I think within sport or anything that you do, whether you get an injury or whether you have illness or whether something's not going right at work and you have a major setback, it's just really focusing on the things that sometimes we forget that are so important in our life, and really being grateful for the things that we do have, rather than focusing on things that maybe not going so well. There's always going to be someone in worse positions, and sometimes I think we can get wrapped up in our own kind of little bubble of what's important and what's not important. So it's kind of just coming back to being grounded and really being grateful for what we do. And a lot of that can purely be sometimes your health and well-being. We sometimes forget that we take that for granted sometimes. On the days that we're feeling good, we just kind of accept that that's the norm, but it's not the norm for everyone. So really being grateful for those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Good advices. And yeah, thank you, Lindsay, for coming to the show. It was really great to have you. And thank you, everybody, for listening. And I'll see you next Wednesday, as always, from 1 till 3 p.m.